good day, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Pirkei Avos, the Ethics of the Fathers, live from Israel with Rabbi Chaim Coffman. Rabbi Coffman still holding in Chapter 2, Mishnah 6. Today we'll be doing Part 10 in Mishnah 6. He's got so much to share on the matter, so we better get right at it, or we could have a Part 11. And, it's all at the rabbi's discretion, and I just enjoy every moment he shares Torah with the rest of the world. So let's just jump right in. Rabbi Coffman, good day to you, sir. Always good to be with you. How are you today?
Doing great. We are going to hit Part 11. I don't think there's a question, probably even a Part 12. Right? It's quite a bit, as you mentioned. Definitely quite a bit. Speak about. So a little bit rejuvenated from last week. Had a few days R&R up north in Netanya. It was beautiful weather. Went out there with my wife, my anniversary, post anniversary, let's say. So it's good. It's good to get away for a couple of days, see the beautiful sea, the Mediterranean. Weather was good. Wasn't so hot, but always good. Like I said, always good.
We're in a heat wave here, right?
It's always good to see different parts of Israel, beautiful country, no question, history, etc. So it's amazing. Avos, it says in Duties of the Heart to look at the beauty, the beauty of creation, right? Beauty of creation in general. Certainly anyone who's been in Israel, breathtaking views. It's beautiful. No question about it. So we are still in the 6th Mishnah, Chapter 2, and we're going to, continue this for a little bit. We were talking about last week, we got actually next part of the Mishnah, where the Mishnah says the bashful person cannot learn, quick and impatient person cannot teach. So someone who's bashful, anyone essentially has come out of Christianity, right, that, they're afraid to ask questions. Right. In other words, they're taught not to ask questions. They're taught just to have, faith and I believe, faith, yeah. Right? In all that. So people now, they come out of Christianity, they're embarrassed, right? Maybe they're going to be embarrassed. They're going to ask a stupid question. So Judaism certainly loves questions, right? That's what we're here for. Everyone's certainly allowed to ask questions, no question. No question about that. But how are you going to get relevant information if you don't ask the question? Right? You can't always find things on Rabbi Dr. Google, right? It doesn't always work. So you have to ask questions. As we mentioned a number of times, you have to have a mentor. Person has to have their rabbi as a mentor, whoever, in order that they can go to ask questions, get guidance, etc.
Get on a learning curve, yeah.
If a person is bashful, they won't ask questions. And if they won't ask questions, they will make mistakes, right? There's a lot to know. There's a lot to do. There's no question, that people will, make mistakes. So in learning, what would a person say? What would a bashful person say? They'll say, it's not good. It's not good to necessarily be bashful, because a person should never say, a fool like me, how could I ever learn, how could I ever ask something in front of a rabbinic scholar, right? Or, me, that I don't have any knowledge or lack knowledge or understanding. So if a person would think that their whole lives, how they ever going to achieve wisdom? Now, there are two sides of the coin, as there always is, right? This is one side of the coin. People will say, I'm embarrassed. How could I ask my rabbi this question? How could I ask, this question? I'm a fool. I don't really know very much, right? So it's going to be embarrassing. Maybe the person himself that they're going to ask the question to, they'll be embarrassed. Why are you asking me this stupid question? That my 5-year-old can answer. That's one side of the coin. Someone will say, a fool like me, how could I ever ask such a question? But there's another side of the coin. There are people who think they know something. They think they're God's gift to the world, right? And they'll say, I'll ask anyway, because I already know the answer. And I'm going to put the person on the spot, right? Someone just asked me, I'm not even going to bother wasting my time. Someone asked me, what are the 36 capital punishments in the Torah? Right? I was going to answer, what do you care?
Yeah.
What do you
Are
care
in
what
breach
they
of
are
them
or
all?
not? So what if I could name them? A lot of them have to do with adultery, immorality, right? What do you call it? Homosexuality, desecrating the Sabbath on purpose. So what if I name them? Makes a difference? Going to make a difference in your life? I don't think it's going to make a difference, right? Because what's the second part of the question going to be? Oh, who does that apply to? Right? How are we going to enforce it if there's no temple? Why would the rabbi say, it's so crucial that they get the death penalty, even if the death penalty was never given when the temple existed? Right? You're going to say, but if they're liable for a death penalty, why didn't they do it? Again, they wanted to make sure if they're going to mete out the death penalty, it meets all the criteria. So they never really gave out the death penalty, but they want to show how important it is. Right? So you can see already what's behind, or what I think is behind the question. That's why I'm not going to deal with it. It's a waste of time. What do you think about this? What do you think about these cases? You really want to know the answer? It's really going to impact your life? You're really now going to be a proper Noahide, or you're going to want to convert? Or you just want to ask questions to make me fidget? Or you're going to try and make me fidget? Trust me, I got big shoulders. I got a big ego as well. I'm not going to fidget. I'm not going to budge. I'm not going to move. And if you throw me garbage, I'm probably not going to throw it back. It's not worth it. Right? It's certainly not worth the effort.
I know you've dealt with
it's
enough
certainly not
trolls
worth
over the years.
my time. Right? So that's the flip side of the coin. Someone's going to ask the question. We mentioned this many times. Someone's going to ask a question because they have an agenda. Right? Someone wants to ask me. That's why I say, if you're listening to one rabbi, don't rabbi shop. I'm not saying you can't listen to other classes, but don't come to me like someone came to me and said, well, I just wanted your opinion because I've asked this rabbi, that rabbi, and the other rabbi. So I said, great. You want a rabbi shop? I can watch the hair I don't have in my head grow. I was like, come on. If you want an opinion, you want to ask a question in Jewish law. Let me tell you what the Talmud says. Whether you hold by it or not, doesn't really matter. Right? But the Talmud says you cannot ask a rabbi one question, not like the answer, and go somewhere else. In other words,
like
if you ask a rabbi
mom versus pop and shop,
you ask them an opinion and a question about Jewish law, and they say permissible, right? Or they say forbidden. Let's say better. They say it's forbidden. Then you say, you know what? I don't like that answer. I'm going to go somewhere else. Well, that's forbidden. Unless the first person you asked made an egregious error, right? He missed a Mishnah, missed a specific piece of Talmud. He missed one of the later commentaries, early commentators that totally disagree with what they said. That's one thing, right? But if it's just shopping around for rabbinic opinion, go elsewhere. That's showing disrespect.
That's right.
Right? And there are certain things that bug me to no end. If you want to know how to bug me, I'm going to tell you right now. One of them is integrity. If you don't have integrity and you start shooting your mouth off, that's one thing I can't stand. People who lie, who misrepresent, that's the second thing I can't stand. Third thing I can't stand is people who go around shopping for opinions. You want to go shopping for an opinion, go elsewhere.
You really don't want the answer.
I'm not the address. Why? Because you don't want an answer. You say, oh, does that mean you have to, that you're not allowed to listen to more than one rabbi on YouTube or whatever? No, right? We're not saying that. But if you ask a specific question and you ask, okay, I want your answer on this question. And then you have 5 follow-up questions why I don't like the answer. Go elsewhere. You're not allowed to do that. I'm not saying you can't ask questions, but you're not allowed to say, well, this rabbi has a different opinion. So go ask him. So what are you wasting my time? You want another opinion? Get another opinion. Right? I had someone, ask me questions left and right, this, that. I got tired. I got tired of listening to the same thing, but I heard this other opinion like this. Okay. So why are you asking me? If you know there's another opinion, right? You want to know why I don't hold by it, so ask me that at the beginning. You're not allowed to get a second opinion over here. Right? In other words, if it's something, let's say in Jewish philosophy, there are different opinions, one thing. If you're asking a rabbi a specific question, Jewish law,
halakhic matter, yeah.
You're not allowed to go rabbi shopping unless the person made a serious mistake. If they made a serious mistake, it's one thing. Then you can call them out on it. But I heard it doesn't say it explicitly like this somewhere else. Could very well be the person's wrong, right? Or the other person just misinterpreted what it says, right? That's probably, I would say, 80 to 90%, of the issues. Oh, but I heard like this somewhere else. Okay, but that doesn't apply over here. You know what happens when you make an assumption, right? You know what happens when you assume. Don't assume anything, right? The rabbis tell you for sure you're not allowed to compare certain cases. Oh, you think it's similar? Well, if the rabbis tell you it's similar, very good. If they don't tell you it's similar, then that's it. You say, but I think it's similar. Do we really care what you think? Do we really care what I think? Doesn't matter, right? If the rabbis of the previous generation say it's not similar, it's not. That's it. Unless you find other rabbis of that generation that also, that disagree. But you coming later can't say, I disagree. I have better information. I have more information. I'm wiser. Not true. Right? Not true. So a person will think, and they'll make a mistake, and they'll say, how can a fool like me ask something in front of a rabbinic scholar? Person does that, you'll never have understanding. You'll never get to understanding, ever, right? And the reason's very simple, because you're not going to ask the question. If you're not going to ask the question, how are you ever going to know, right? We mentioned, I think, last week, one of the rabbis hid under his Rebbe's bed while he was being intimate with his wife, and they caught him and said, what are you doing? I'm here to learn, right? He wasn't a pervert. I mean, at least that's not what the Talmud says, right? Absolutely wasn't a pervert over here. Wanted to see, wanted to know. Right, what proper way to do things. Right, today, people would have a field day with this. They're gonna say, "What? This guy's got no life. Why don't you just, watch porno on TV or whatever? Well, what's he doing? What's he doing over here?" But we have to understand everything. We dissect everything. We want to understand what's behind everything, why we do, etc. We don't always get great answers, right? But at the end of the day, that's how you learn, right? You learn by having a mentor, someone who can guide you. And you learn by asking questions. If you don't ask questions, you'll never get anywhere, right? In other words, if a person's not proactive, what's going to happen? We know what's going to happen, right? You will not get the understanding, right? How are they ever going to achieve wisdom, right? That's why it says bashful person cannot learn, because they're not going to ask questions. They'll be too embarrassed to ask questions. So what's going to happen? They'll make mistakes. They'll make mistakes. They'll never achieve wisdom. Now, this is what our great Mussar rabbis tell us. If a person asks the question of fools, then what's going to happen? He says, and they guard the ones that give to them. Right? Let's understand the statement. A person asks the question of fools. So what's going to happen? They guard the ones giving it to. Means they squander their money. They don't give it to the right people. So too, that's really what it means. Simple explanation. So too, when it comes to wisdom, we need to speak to the people that have the wisdom. Right? We shouldn't be embarrassed to ask questions. So we clarify our doubts. Now we mentioned this once, we mentioned it twice. Mention it many times. You got to be careful who you ask your question to, right? Somebody may have the title of rabbi, means nothing. Someone who claims, they have all this information, they know better than other people, they call people out, they have no credentials. Why are we going to listen to someone who has no credentials? Why would we listen to someone who's quote unquote orthodox, who brings a sex therapist to speak in a synagogue, right? Why would we listen to the same person who brings a missionary to be a motivational speaker? We would never do that, right? That doesn't make logical sense. A person's going to say, listen, let's say brings a sex therapist. She's always speaking to women. She's not speaking from the pulpit. There's logic over here. Don't lose your brains over here. Does that make any sense? According to the laws of modesty, would you bring such a person to speak in front of men and women together? Gee, I don't think so. That's not according to the laws of modesty. Why would you bring even a, not top 10 tier missionary, right, as a motivational speaker? And your synagogue and the Jewish Federation, they're going to pay 50 grand to boot to do it. You're going to respect that rabbi who does it? And even if he's going to say, well, I asked my rabbi, he said it's okay to do, but he didn't want to be named publicly. Of course he didn't want to be named publicly. Be a moron if he did, because people would tar and feather him. They would say, what are you, crazy? You're going to tell a student of yours this is okay? How are you allowed, how is that permissible? So what's the answer? It's not. So people have to think. People have to use their minds. Does this make sense according to Torah? And if it doesn't make sense according to Torah, ask, right? Be man enough or woman enough to ask. Is this true? I mean, ask it in a respectful way, right? You're not going to call people out over here. Go to some rabbinic authority, whoever that may be, and ask them the question. Is this something that's okay? I'll give an example. There was a certain rabbi, I don't even want to call him rabbi, but, there was a certain rabbi that for Purim, there were students studying outside the country, right? Guys studying in the yeshiva, an Orthodox yeshiva. So what did he do on Purim? He made a Purim party at night, the night of Purim. What did he do? I think he rented out a bar or something, and it was mixed. It was mixed with men and women, right? Young adults, whatever. Sure, plenty of alcohol flowing. And what did he say? What did he want these yeshiva students to do, these guys? He wanted them to come. Why? He wanted to make it a stronger, a better atmosphere, right? Because there'll be yeshiva students there. That's great. You're going to bring yeshiva students, been learning, day and night. They're guarding their eyes. They're guarding what they speak and how they speak. They're working on themselves spiritually. And now you're throwing them into a sewer. You're throwing them into a cesspool, right? And you say, okay, I want to, they should come. Why should they come? Because they're going to make it a stronger event. Now, why would you tempt somebody? Why would you put a stumbling block in front of somebody?
Exactly.
Like that. So another rabbi came out and said, listen, if you show me, this other rabbi gave you permission, then I will plaster this permissibility on the front door of my synagogue. I'll make it bigger than a billboard, right? I'll make it absolutely humongous, right? I'll spread it throughout all the community. Show me where this rabbi said it's okay to do such a thing. Show me any rabbi, you idiot, who's going to show me that it's okay to do such a thing. And what's the answer? It's not. Oh, for the sake of Kiru, for the sake of doing outreach, why not? Bringing people together. Come on. There's a limit. Not everything is permissible. Okay. Go ask your rabbi says that's okay to do.
Clear.
Go ask your rabbi if it's okay, to invite yeshiva students to such an event. I don't think he's going to say for the sake of doing outreach with Jews, that's going to be permissible. But if he would say it was, I'm more than happy to make a billboard out of it. I'll put it on my front door in my synagogue. Show me the proof. Show me the proof. There is no proof. Forbidden. Right? You want to listen to such a person? I don't think so. I want to listen to anything he says after that. Right? You can't trust what they say. Nonetheless, you have to go to somebody who has the wisdom. Now, there are people that talk a good game. There are people that may have learned, but if as we mentioned before, if they don't learn by other rabbis, they don't ask them their questions, they do what they want, they have no credibility. I don't care if they have rabbinic supervision, they got rabbinic ordination or not. Doesn't matter. They have to answer to someone. There has to be accountability. If there's no accountability, then they can say whatever they want. Right? Now, does that mean they don't necessarily have wisdom? They could have wisdom. Right? They could have a certain level of knowledge. Right? But again, certain things, you have to have common sense. Right? There's what we call a fifth branch of Jewish law. And that's the branch of law of having common sense. Right? Now, common sense over here would tell you, somebody's been learning day in and day out, talking about a guy over here working on himself. Why in the world, according to logic, Forget about Torah, forget about anything else. Why would you send him to such a place? You're sending him to a place where he's going to fail, where he's absolutely going to fall over here. Right? You want to tell me that's okay? How can you say that's okay?
At all.
You're a fanatic. Don't tell me I'm a fanatic. I already know that. Right? But show me.
You're all in for sure.
Does that show the person has wisdom? No. Doesn't. Even if his quote-unquote rabbi would say such a thing, you really think that it's still a good thing to do, and if he says it's permissible? Right? This other rabbi says, no problem. Right? He didn't back down wanting this missionary to speak. He said it was the desecration of God's name. Yeah, it was the desecration of God's name because you were bringing in this speaker to your synagogue, not because we came out against it. Right? That's a whole different ballgame. But, this person refused to back down. So you want to tell me people ask him questions, different things, looked up to him in the Jewish community. Is that called wisdom? I'm not going to call it wisdom. Is it being short-sighted? I'm not even going to say it's being short-sighted. I'm saying it's well beyond that. It means its philosophical outlook is corrupt.
Right.
If a person's philosophical outlook is corrupt, they don't have wisdom. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care what it smells like. They don't have wisdom. Yeah. You can't ask them questions. Doesn't matter what questions they are. They could be basic questions. You don't have anything to do with such a person. And the reason is because it's got no credibility. Right? It's got absolutely zero credibility. So you want to ask the question. You're entitled to ask the question. But go to someone who has the wisdom. Does that mean, every rabbi is learned? Does that mean they don't make mistakes and they're perfect? No, it doesn't mean that. But for goodness sakes, it's a major difference where someone makes a mistake, and someone else is telling people left and right things that are wrong. Right? And they're telling them to do things and go down a certain path which are wrong. That's a whole different ballgame. Right? That's a whole different ballgame. So in this case, as we mentioned before, you cannot be embarrassed to ask questions. You have to clarify doubts. If you do not clarify doubts, what is going to happen is you will certainly make mistakes, right? You're absolutely going to make mistakes over here. And it's very easy. Someone here points out, it's very easy to find someone who's going to fit your agenda, right? That's called rabbi shopping, right? You have to find someone who you connect with, someone, who speaks your language, etc. And you listen to what they have to say. If they have to look something up, they have to ask someone else, okay, not everyone knows everything, right? That's clear. At the same time, we're not rabbi shopping here, right? That the Talmud, the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, across the board says is forbidden. Meaning, when I ask a rabbi one question in Jewish law, I don't like the answer, I'm not allowed to go to someone else. Period. Right? That is clear. There are no disagreements over here unless the person made an egregious mistake. If they made an egregious mistake, that's something else. Right? Then okay. Right? Then you can call them on it. Then you can ask them on it, because seemingly there's a mistake here. If there's no mistake being made, then why are you going to find a different opinion? Right? Like someone said, I asked this rabbi, that rabbi, and the other rabbi, so I want your opinion. Go blow it out your ear. I got better things to do with my time. Right? You ask the question, I'll give you an answer if I know. If I don't know, I'll find out. Right? But if you're asking the question, unless it's a serious mistake, you're not allowed. It's totally forbidden to go to someone else and ask the same question because you didn't like the answer. Comes along King Solomon. King Solomon tells us in Proverbs, chapter 30, verse 32. If you've been abused, remain aloof. If you have thoughts of responding in kind, put your hand to your mouth. Now, it seems a little bit enigmatic. Looks a little bit problematic over here. What does this mean exactly? It comes on, the Talmud tells us, you look it up, Brachot, Tractate Brachot 63b, explains that anyone who disgraces themselves for the sake of Torah. What does that mean? He asks about everything. Right? There are no limits what the person asks. And he's unsure about it, even though people mock him for this. Nonetheless, he's going to be praised. Why? You're going to say, I don't understand. Person's asking everything about everything, maybe even basic questions, maybe questions he shouldn't really ask. So we can say, okay, if he's asking about everything, right, there's a problem over here, right? Why is he asking about every little thing? So over there, what do we say? We say that ultimately he's going to be praised. Why is he ultimately going to be praised? Because he's not afraid to ask the question, right? He's absolutely not afraid to ask the question because he wants an answer. Now, question is how much patience, this rabbi is going to have for them, right? When they're asking about everything, but that's how you get answers, right? You have to be respectful, whatever, but as long as the question is clean, right, in general, then a person should get an answer, right? And I got a lot of information, tremendous amount of information from my Rebbe based on that, because that's exactly what I did. I asked him everything about everything because he can answer everything about everything, right? One of the few people in this generation, you can ask him anywhere, and he'll give you an answer, right? So, to me, nothing was taboo. I mean, I wouldn't say nothing, but, within reason. So I asked him, political questions, philosophical questions, questions in Jewish law, other things, let's say stuff in medicine that he happens to be an expert in. So that's how you get answers, right? That's how you get answers. So it comes along the Gemara over here, and the Gemara says, you know what? Person asks everything about everything. You're going to think the person's a fool, right? He's an absolute fool over here. What's he doing? He's getting information, right? He's asking about everything he's unsure about, right? So why isn't that praiseworthy? Why in the world should that not be praiseworthy? Right? He's going to ask all kinds of questions, going to get all kinds of information. Now, people have said to me, I can't believe you would ask your Rebbe such a question. Okay, right? Most people wouldn't think certain things I would say that come out of my mouth. I can't believe you just said that, right? I can't believe you even meant that, whatever. But that's how you get information, right? Now, some things I asked, I didn't get answers. He absolutely refused. There were certain things, as the English would say, were a little bit dodgy. He didn't want to answer, right? He didn't want to have it said in his name, X, Y, and Z, right? Which I understand. I definitely understand. That didn't stop me from trying to get an answer, right? I kept, plugging away, and, it's like the irresistible force against the immovable object. And what happens when both behemoths clash? Nothing, it's a stalemate, right? You try and get something out of him he doesn't want to give, you're not going to give. Doesn't matter how much you prod, doesn't matter anything else, right? But again, I got a lot of information and a lot of things that I can use in practical terms because I asked the questions, right? I asked the question, what about this? What about that? Does this apply? Doesn't apply? This, that. And I wrote a lot of this down, right? One day I may even publish it. A lot of these questions, I got more than 500, 700 questions, more that I asked them all kinds of different things. I mean, certain things I wouldn't publish, but, there are many, many things I think people should know, that people should understand. You're talking about a Torah giant of the generation, right? And, and what he thinks and what he says and, and all that's worth millions. But how did I get the information? How did I get certain information that probably people might have been so much in awe of this person that they wouldn't have asked the question because I asked the question, right? Same thing. That's what my Rebbe did. He got into the Brisker of Rav Yisrael Zev Soloveitchik of blessed memory. My Rebbe says, famous son of Rav Chaim Brisker. I asked my Rebbe once, how'd you get close to him? He said he liked my questions. I even know more about him than his son. His brother-in-law just passed away a few months ago. Rav David Soloveitchik of blessed memory. He was married to my Rebbe's sister. She should be well. And he said, I know more about him, more about the Brisker of than his own son. Because you know why? I wasn't afraid to ask questions. Now, obviously, with respect and everything else. But he said, I wasn't afraid to ask the questions. And he quotes them all over the place. Quotes them in Jewish law, quotes them in Jewish thought, right, on the Parsha, other things, quotes them quite a bit. Because he said, this is what I heard. This is what he said, and this is what I'm going to give over to you, right, to the next generation. Because it's pretty darn impressive that he was close to all the Torah giants of the last generation, right? He once told me, I was taking him somewhere. He's telling me about all the rabbis he knew, all the great rabbis he knew of the previous generation. I know this one. I know that one. I know the other one. He looks at me and he goes, look. He goes, I even know you. Yeah, so I said to him, I said, oh, I said, you even know me. I said, oh, what a merit. What an unbelievable merit. The Rav even knows me. He said, yeah, look, I even know you. All right, I digress here. But the point is, I wasn't afraid to ask him questions. I mean, I did it with the utmost respect most of the time. But I got answers to questions that people probably would have been afraid to ask. And they said, how'd you ask that question? I said, because I asked it. I wasn't afraid to ask it. I said, I want to know an answer. I had a question, or, I saw this question asked by others. Whatever, I wanted to know what his opinion was. He knows I wasn't going to take his opinion and just say, oh, that's your opinion. What about this? He once told me something. I'll just throw this out. This you should never do, right? I always say, do as I say, not as I do, right? And so I asked him once a question, and he said, yeah, it's like this and like this, and I hold it like this and like this, whatever it was. So I asked him, I said, by the way, is there any other rabbinical authority that holds like you? That holds like the Rav in this case? So he looked at me and goes, I said it. That's not good enough for you? You're worried about if someone else says it? That's a little bit good of, a little bit good musser, right? He had this, he had a smile when he said it. It's like, what, I'm chopped liver? I'm not good enough here? I was like, no. I said, I was just, I was just wondering. So people will say, but that's his opinion. I said, you're right. I said, I don't pick and choose who my rabbi is. I don't pick and choose what, this one says like this, so I hold like him. Or this one says like this, I said, I take the good with the bad. I take the stringent with the leniencies for the last 25 years. I don't pick and choose. They go, okay. So like I said, certain things he said to me, I would never repeat in public, right? That, people think, oh, he's such, he's so stringent on this, on that, and the other thing. I've seen a bunch of leniencies. If I would tell people, they'd be shocked. They'd be absolutely shocked. He calls it the way he sees it, right? But, so what's the point over here? So I don't know if I'll be praised. Maybe I'll get knocked down for not showing enough respect, right? But what does it say? It says over there, you ask everything about everything you're unsure about. Even though people are going to mock you, right? And people would say, wow, you asked that question? I said, yeah, you want to hear what the answer was? You want to really hear what he told me? I said, before you start hammering about the question, I said, you want to hear what he said? So what does it say over here? It says he'll be ultimately be praised. Why are you going to be ultimately be praised? Because I promise, believe nether, without a vow over here, if I would bring out, the 500, 600, 700 questions that I asked them, some of them not your your average question over here, people are going to say, wow,
questions.
Yeah. They'll say, this is really great. I can't believe you asked the question. Look at the answer. Look what he's answering over here. Look what he's telling you, according to Jewish law, according to Jewish philosophy. What will people say? They're like, thank God you asked the question, you idiot. I can't believe you asked the question. Want to hear the answer? The answer is worth millions, right? So I remember once, I'll tell you a story. I remember once I was at my youngest son's circumcision at his bris. So my Rebbe came and he spoke. He was there for a long time. And so anyway, I was walking him out, and as he got in the car, he says, I came, I ate, which doesn't really eat in most places. He says, I came, he says, I ate, and I spoke. He goes, you happy? He goes, you happy with that? So I said, yeah. I said, for sure. Right? So anyways, then he left. So a friend of mine, he said, you told me a lot of stories. I had a lot of doubts that maybe you exaggerated, some of the stories. He goes, when I heard that, all the stories are gold. Retroactively, now I believe in all the stories. Any case, what's the opposite over here? If he muzzled himself and did not ask, right? Let's say he's embarrassed. He didn't want to ask the questions. He's going to have to cover his mouth with his hand, as he'll be unable to answer questions. Right? Let's analyze the statement. He muzzles himself. He doesn't ask the question. If he doesn't ask the question, he still has doubts. Right? The doubt is not going to get clarified. He's going to have to cover his mouth with his hands. Why? Because now he's not going to be able to answer. right? He's not going to be able to answer the question. If he muzzled himself, he doesn't ask the question, how in the world is he going to have the ability to answer? He won't be able to answer, right? Maybe he'll make it up as he goes along, but that's not going to be, it's not going to be a true answer. As I heard my Rebbe say a number of times, better to say I don't know than make up an answer, right? Then make up an answer is not true.
Right.
Right? So a number of times he asked me a question. I was about to give an answer. I started to give an answer, and he said, I don't want an answer. Think. They're not such a clear-cut question. Think.
It tells you to think. Yep.
It gets you to think, right? You don't just say what's at the, what's at the top of your head. You might be right. You 100% might be right, but he said you got to think. You got to stop and think, analyze it, and then answer. Do not give an answer straight away. Right? You gotta, grind it. You gotta churn it around. You gotta think about it, because there are a lot of aspects to a question. I don't think most people, realize. They'll ask a question. Some things are very straightforward. Other things, it depends on a lot of things. Depends on a lot of factors. It can depend on who the person is asking the question. It can depend on where they're holding in life. It can depend on if there's if there's an issue between husband and wife. Is it going to affect them? Is it going to affect other people? There could be a number of factors involved. In other words, there are certain things, according to straight Jewish law, it'll be permitted, be forbidden, right? Maybe it's clear cut. The problem is there are other factors involved. Even if it's clear cut, it may depend on a number of
circumstances. Yeah.
And because of the circumstances, it's not going to make it so clear cut, right? In other words, even though we know, Jewish law to be X, whatever the question is, there could be a lot of different things going on. Person asking the question, who does it affect? Where's the person holding? There are certain things that, a person may ask the question, they're holding at a different level, right? So really, in many ways, you could be lenient. On the other hand, they don't want to be lenient, right? Let's give an example. I spoke 2 weeks ago on Tanakh Talk about going in the ways of the non-Jews. Now, one of the things I mentioned there at the end was about Thanksgiving. Now, Thanksgiving seems clear if you don't hold, according to Rabbi Victor Miller of blessed memory, who held that it was idolatry. That it was really a religious thing. Most rabbinical authorities disagree, right? That it wasn't really a religious thing. It was really, a whole custom based on the fact, with the Indians, and the Pilgrims, and they made peace, and then they killed them all, whatever, right? But the point is, even if it's not a religious holiday, right? There are a number of rabbinical authorities hold that you shouldn't make a religious event on it. Ramosha Feinstein, the blessed memory, brings down, one of the Torah giants of the last generation in America, that it brings down that if your kid was bar mitzvah, he's 13 in a day, and you want to make a special festive meal for the family, for others, whatever it is, that day happens to fall on Thanksgiving. So Ramosha Feinstein holds make it on a different day. It's not a religious ceremony, right? Thanksgiving's all about turkey and football. Not necessarily in that order, right? And probably most games that are on Thanksgiving probably not good, right? Because who plays in most of those games? Troy Lions, right? Never been a powerhouse, right? Throughout the last 25 years. Pretty much been a nothing team for a long time, right? Regardless, so I would still tell people that if they're in the process of conversion, and the only time to get together with families on Thanksgiving, right? If the only time is to get together on Thanksgiving where you're not going to kill people and they're not going to kill you and you bring your own food and whatever, there are no religious discussions, but that's the only time to see family. Can't see them December 25th. Can't see them on Shabbos.
4th of July.
Right? You can't see them. Well, 4th of July might be good, right? Or, maybe Mother's and Father's Day, let's say. But there, for many things that happen on Shabbos, you can't go, right? You can't go. For other religious ceremonies, you can't go. So I would say, if that's the only time you get together with family and the whole family's going to be there, you're not going to kill each other, then you should go, right? It's not a bad thing to go. Oh, but then you just get through saying, right? Then you just get through saying it's going to the ways of the non-Jews. So why should I do it, even if it is for the sake of family? So it depends, right? This is where it depends. If you get along with family, this is the only time you get to see them, right? And you really want to go, okay, but what about going in the ways of the non-Jews? You're right. Maybe according to those rabbinical authorities, it'd be problematic, right? It certainly would be problematic. As a Jew in training, right, it would be less of an issue. That would be less of an issue. After conversion, might be more of an issue, right? But that being said, some people say, Rabbi, I hate Thanksgiving. I hate what it represents, right? Even if it's not a religious thing. I don't want to have anything to do with these non-Jewish customs. I don't have anything to do with Father's Day. I don't have to do with Mother's Day. I don't have to do with July 4th, Thanksgiving, any of these things. So somebody like that, okay, then you shouldn't go. Now, what would happen if family puts a lot of pressure on? Right? And the family puts a lot of pressure on. They say, listen, the whole family's going to be there. You should really be there. I would say that's not really the time to stand up for Torah. Right? I would say that it's better to go. But if the person's adamant, they say, I don't want to go. I don't like what it represents. Okay. Right? But for other people, I would tell them, it's not such a bad thing. Right? To get together, getting together with family may override that. So you have to take that into account. You have to take into account where they're holding, where their family's holding. Right. You can't just say outright, it's going in the ways of non-Jews forbidden. That is true.
That is like true. A Super Bowl party or a
right.
CFL Grey Cup party. According to the
letter of the law, I mentioned last week going to ball games or the CFL or any of these things for a guy, well, for a Jew, what would be the prohibition? As long as there's no immorality or immodesty going on there. So what would be the worst thing? Would it be you're wasting time when you could have been learning Torah, which is pretty bad. Fine. But if that's the only thing, and let's say that's how you relate to certain members of your family, let's say, your father wants to take you to the ball game, and that's the only way you can really have a connection to them, that's the only reason why it's forbidden. So for the sake of family peace, you probably have to go, even if it kills you, right? Even, if they really forced your hand and they said, listen, I really want you to go, it's not on a day that's forbidden. Right? There are less issues. It's just, you're just wasting time when you could have, when you could have been learning Torah. You gotta say, well, what if I wasn't going to be learning Torah? Okay, person has to decide, is this going to be beneficial to my relationship? Is it not going to be beneficial to my relationship? Or a person can say, this is just something I don't do, and that's it.
Yeah,
right? Regardless. Now, that could make a wedge, more
understand
of a wedge
what piety is, right?
Huh?
You got to understand what piety is and lean towards that direction.
That's true. But a person could say, you know what? I'm going to say across the board, this is something I'll never do. Right? This is something absolutely I would never do. Right? Someone once asked me about going to a basketball game. Would I ever consider going to a basketball game? Let's say, was it on Shabbos or whatever? So I said, seeing people run around in tank top and shorts doesn't do it for me anymore. So the person said, okay, makes sense. And then they left it. Other people say, come on, you're a fanatic, you're this, you're that. Right? But at the end, even for the sake of harmony. Now, I would say on myself, and this is what I've done. I mean, I wasn't in the States that long, so it doesn't really matter. Right? It didn't really come up that much. But for myself, I said, no, this is just something I won't do. Right? I'm not going back to that. What's the reason? What's the reason? A, because I don't think it's a good thing. B, the reason is because it's not going to do anything. In other words, if I go, let's say, I go with a bunch of family members to a game, right? Let's say I don't go decked out in my suit, in my hat, and I go a little more incognito, right? I'll go with a baseball cap and this and that, whatever, right? I'll dress down a little bit, which is also problematic. But let's say, for the sake of family peace, that it would be okay in such a case to go. Yeah. The question would be, is this making the sanctification of God's name? Is this drawing secular family members closer to you or not? Right? In other words, if this is a Kiruv event, This is going to draw them closer. And they're going to say, wow, I can't believe it. He's really coming to a game. Look what it really means. It's drawing everyone closer together. They're all playing the guitar. They're singing Kumbaya. It's all beautiful. If that's the case, maybe he's going to go, right? Maybe in that case, I would have to go. But 99% of the time, right, I'm going to go out on a limb here because I know that you're recording here. I'm going to go out on a limb 99% of the time. That is not going to happen. They might think, oh, what a cool thing he came. Is that going to draw them closer to Torah? I don't think so. Is that going to be something where a person's going to say, where you can say, well, that's just planting a seed. That's just showing, that's just showing, how respectful you are, how cool it is an Orthodox Jew can go. But reality is, what does that do? What are they going to say? They're going to say, see, you went, how come these other Orthodox Jews don't go to these events? Right? Now you'll see if you go, let's say in New York, I'm sure you can see Orthodox Jews at games, at a hockey game, at a basketball game. They, Madison Square Garden had a kosher stand. I don't know how kosher exactly it was. Whatever, they had a kosher stand. It's like, listen, you go to a ball game, seventh inning, you pray the afternoon service, all these great things that you can do. You can have the best of both worlds. What's the problem? Right? What's the obvious problem? The obvious problem is both worlds clash. That's the problem. And you're giving off a bad precedent. Because then people say, see, these Orthodox Jews go. I've seen Orthodox Jews in a casino. Well, a casino is more problematic. Gambling definitely more problematic. But in general, these things, that are, let's say dicey, they're on the, they're on the, they're on the bubble. That's a good word. They're on the bubble over here. Now, you represent being an Orthodox Jew. Now, most people don't know. You're more modern, you're less modern. Depends how you dress. All these different things. They don't know all the ins and outs.
That's right.
Right? Gotta watch my video I have on orthodoxconversion.com. It's about choosing a Jewish community. And I spoke about different communities. Modern Orthodox community, religious Zionist community, Chabad, the outer Orthodox community, etc. What the differences in dress, differences in outlook, and all that. So when they see an Orthodox Jew, they make a lump statement. And they say, oh, see, this person went to a game. What, you don't think he's religious? Yeah, I saw him wearing tzitzis. I saw him wearing a yarmulke. It's a problem. Why is it a problem? It's a problem because they give everyone else a bad name, right? Even if they act appropriately, what they're saying is this is okay. Now, the Talmud makes clear going to a place where they're going to kill people, right? Sending slaves in front of the lions or whatever, right? I guess modern day UFC or boxing or whatever. Right, if they're killing people like Rashi says over there, okay, that I understand is problematic. But what if it's just for sport? What if it's just for entertainment, let's say? Then you have to ask the question, everything's a moral imperative. Am I getting good value? Right? I told the story of a certain basketball player, he's a Hall of Famer. Nonetheless, he was a Hall of Famer. And he got in an argument with a fan, right? A fan said something or whatever, and he spit on the fan, he missed the fan, he spit on a 4-year-old girl. Right? So you want to say, that person I want to emulate? Right? This is what I'm doing watching this stuff. These people deserve to be emulated. So there's a moral issue. There's a moral issue. And we have to ask the question, okay, am I better off doing this? Now, you're going to tell me, what about for the sake of family? Not everything for the sake of family is going to be permitted. Right? And if he's and if other people are doing things and they look at it and say, see, that person can do it. Why can't you do it? Now, just on that point, I'll take your question in a second. Just on that point where someone's going to say, you know what? I saw these people do it, and what's the matter? They're not good enough for you? They're not Jewish enough for you? They don't eat enough gefilte fish, right? They may say, but what are you going to answer them? This person, first of all, has about a 5-second attention span. So what are you going to answer them when they can't even read the alphabet? How are you going to explain the differences in a way they're going to be able to fathom what it means? And to say that there are different ways of looking at things, but really the essence of the halacha is it's forbidden. It's forbidden. They'll say, oh, they're just making it up as they go along. Oh, it's just their opinion. And other people disagree. And they go through this whole, you never win the argument. You never even get to the argument because there's no one home to talk to. Right? So you have to see who's asking it. You have to see what the repercussions are. Certain things I had to do where I was adamant, didn't want to do it, and I got stuck, absolutely stuck. And for the sake of family harmony, I had no choice. I was rip-roaring mad, but I had no choice. And in the end, yeah, people were happy I was there, etc. Did it make a sanctification of God's name? Absolutely not. I am convinced beyond I don't care what anyone says. I'm convinced beyond the shadow of a doubt, didn't do anything. Right? Did absolutely nothing. You're just happy I was there. Right? Was that like a watershed moment? And someone says, wow, where, it was unbelievable. What a sanctification of God's name you were there.
You might have inspired them.
Yeah. Maybe one person, if that. But no, it wasn't. It didn't do anything. Right? It didn't affect anything. Right? I got stuck in a certain situation. So I basically had no choice. But in the end, did it do that? Did it change people's minds? No. It didn't change their minds. Not anything I saw, certainly after that event, and years later, people, nobody brought it up and said, wow, what a beautiful thing that you did. What are they? No. I put my foot down at that point and I said, this will never, ever happen again.
Good
I said, I'll never, ever put myself in such a situation. You want to make such a thing? I'm not coming. Don't invite me. Don't invite me because it's too problematic. Right? And I'm not going to try and squeegee myself into a small spot to find, and they don't understand what you're going through either. Right? First of all, not so simple. You can go in many ways, but there are other factors. But you have to turn yourself into a pretzel to make it okay. But they don't see that. They absolutely don't see that. All they see is, this is what we're doing, you have to come. Right? This is something you have to do. Like people say, well, if my daughter's Jewish and she's married to a non-Jew, she has a child, that kid is Jewish. Well, that's a technicality. It's a technicality. The Talmud says that child has a status of a mamzer. That child has a status of a puzzle, someone who has a blemish on their soul. There are a number of things that the Talmud says. In the end, the person's right, that the kid is Jewish, right? Even though later commentaries say if that kid wants to go through a conversion, go in front of a rabbinical court to get that stigma off their soul, they should do it. They absolutely should do it, right? If they don't do it, okay, right? But they absolutely should do it. That's one of the questions I asked my Rebbe also, a question like this. If they came in front of your rabbinical court, would you tell them? You say 100%, they should do it, right? They absolutely should do it. So the person comes back and says, see, but the kid's Jewish. Right, but they're missing all the information in between. They're just saying that's the bottom line, but that really isn't the bottom line. Right? To them, that's the answer. Right? The reality is it's not so simple like many things aren't. Right? But, okay, person has a blemish on their soul. Person is called someone not allowed to come into the community of the Jewish people. Right? Someone who's considered I'm not going to say an illegitimate child, a blemished soul over here. Does that sound like, oh, but it's permissible? What are you, an idiot? There are different opinions about what it is. It's not so, de facto, you're right. De facto, you're right, that in the end, the person is considered a full-fledged Jew. Right? But if you're missing all the information in between, and you're taking all this and say, see, but that's the bottom line. That's not the bottom line. That's just a technicality. But if you miss all the information in between, so you're missing the whole point. Yeah, you had a question before?
Well, just more or less a comment as usual, Rabbi. I'm grateful for what you're saying. I remember about 3 or 4 years ago when I was earlier in my Noahide walk, and I was on a Google meeting room, and person I ended up getting into a headbutt with, I did not know was somebody's rabbi. Didn't look like a rabbi, wasn't dressed like a rabbi. I had no clear markings or understandable clarity that this, in fact, was a rabbi. Turns out, though, there was rift, that developed over it, and I think it would have been avoided had there been a clearer state of piety. When somebody's in that compromised situation or circumstance, there's more opportunity for that confusion to leak into a scenario and then not be looked at
But see,
in
that's
that
that's
light.
the whole point. If a person doesn't portray themselves as someone who they should be, right? Even if you want to say it's externals and everything else, and they're talking up a storm, like you say, I wouldn't even thought this person's a rabbi. How could they talk like that? Right? This happened with somebody. Thank God's not in a position to do anything right now, and it should continue that way. But the person like shut off his mouth, got a big mouth, right? No question about it. Showed disrespect to me, to Rabbi Singer, Rabbi Skobach, other people, called them out, and he comes across as being a rabbi, right? So what's the issue? Where's the respect? Where's the respect? Right?
Yeah,
If you disagree, that's fine. But if you portray yourself as something that you're not, right, then that's a much bigger
that's a
issue.
fraud. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Right. And, as somebody points out as
Geneva
well,
Da'at.
the worst thing is a lack of respect.
Mm.
Right. See, this is another one of my pet peeves, which goes way back as well. And that is you have to bend over backwards to respect someone's opinion that makes no sense. They have no learning, and all they do is make fun of you, but you have to respect them. It's like I always say, somebody, read a Wikipedia article on physics, and they say, you know what? I'm taking down Stephen Hawking. I'm going to knock him out, right? You don't know anything about physics, right? He's got a PhD, one of the top physicists, ever, let's say, right? You're going to sit there and argue? Where's the respect? So the problem is the other side. It happens here in Israel a lot. The seculars have no respect for Torah. They have no respect for rabbis, no respect for anything holy. They just make fun of everything, right? And they
Like trolls.
they totally demoralize us. Say all kinds of things. Blaspheme against God, against the Torah, against everything in between. But we have to show respect for them, right? Now, we can't, obviously, two wrongs don't make a right. Because they do something doesn't mean I have to act out of character. I should be yelling and screaming. I should be cursing them. I should be doing all these other things. That's also forbidden, right? I'm not allowed to do that. But what happens?
Yes, bad form.
The evil inclination gets the best of us. The evil inclination comes in and says, you're not going to answer that person. You're not going to put that person in their place.
Smash.
And they deserve. If they deserve to be smashed up the side of the head, in my language, with a Louisville slugger, that they absolutely deserve it, you're going to say, what are you getting so angry about? What did I say that was so offensive? What are you talking about? You're not respecting us. If you don't respect us, why in the world do I have to show any level of respect to you? And the only reason I have to do that is because the Torah tells me. Torah tells me I can't take revenge. Right? Torah tells me, I can't speak Lashon Hara. Torah tells me all kinds of things I have to be careful of you. So, secular Jew, they don't have these ramifications. Right? They don't have these things because they don't hold by it. So, they feel they can say whatever they want. You answer them, they'll say, what are you getting so upset about? What are you getting, what are you getting your
Out of control.
Yeah, you're out of control. I was only kidding. Whatever. Why are you taking things so seriously? Because we take Torah seriously, right? But you cannot get in a tit for tat war with people, even if they deserve it, right? We still have to be Torah abiding Jews, no matter what people say. Now, don't get me wrong. That's not the same thing as the Christians would say of turning the other cheek. You don't have to turn the other cheek and be abused. That's for sure. You have an obligation.
Don't be a boor,
to stand
as
up
you've
for
discussed.
Torah, but it has to be respectful. So I'll tell you, I made a video. I don't know if you saw it. I made a video Thursday night. Usually I do it on Tuesday night. I was away for a couple of days. I made a video on the Parsha. And I started out a little bit loud, right? When I started my video, and whatever, I was loud throughout, which That's my personality. So someone had commented, I should get voice lessons, or I should learn it. I should learn how to speak in such a way where people are going to be able to listen to the lesson.
I've been told to
Right.
get off the air directly.
So forget about what was said or not said. It was about how it was said. Now, most people know I'm very passionate about what I do. When I yell and scream, right, it's not just for effect, right? It's about passion. You don't like the passion, don't listen. I'm not forcing anyone to listen here. Listen anywhere else, right? Yelling and screaming, turn the volume down, right? That you can do. Or people think I speak too fast, which I do sometimes. You can do it in half speed, right? You can hear me speak very slowly, right? You can do that. You can absolutely do that, right? But if someone comes along, again, I wasn't personally affronted for people say, a number of times, yell and scream too much and this and that. Yelling and screaming, right, is to bring home a point, but where does it come from? Yeah, you're going to tell me it comes from your personality. It does, right? Why does it come from my personality? Very simple, because there's passion. There's passion for what I love. There's passion for what I hate, right? For what I can't stand. So I should take voice lessons so people will be able to listen to the message. The one who don't want to listen to the message, don't listen to it. No one's under obligation. You think that's going to stop me from, that's my style. Take it for better or for worse. That is what it is. Sometimes I scream more. Sometimes I scream less. Would I get my opinion over better if I spoke monotone? Maybe. Right? We'll call a spade, right? Maybe that would be the case, right? But that's not going to change, right? That's absolutely not going to change. So someone wants to make that comment, so don't listen. Who says you have to listen, right? I believe the message is good. You don't think the message is good because I yell and scream, okay? Right? I made an 8-minute video, 8.5-minute video against this rabbi in Boca, Boca Raton, Florida, about this missionary. Yeah, I got heated the whole time for 8.5 minutes. It might have been a whole scream fest, right? True. So I said, I don't have to listen. Someone made a comment, if that person all they're going to do is yell and scream, I don't have to listen. Okay, so don't listen. You don't have to listen, right? But don't, anger based on the fact that the person's a heretic and people have to be warned, right? So you can say it in a straight face. You can say it monotone, or you can say it with a little bit of passion. A little bit of passion, you know what? A little bit of passion goes a long way. Because I think too many people are just afraid to say anything. Not only are they afraid to say anything, they don't want to show too much emotion, right? So don't mistake, yelling and screaming for emotion, right? That's what it is, right? It's coming from the right spot. That there's no question, and if someone's going to do something egregious, and what should I do? Take what I'm going to write, and I'm just going to read it like a monologue. Today, somebody wanted this missionary to come speak. And we think this is very problematic because, how can you not be passionate? Something so egregious, you just sit there and give it over in a monotone way, and people are going to accept it more? I don't think they're going to accept it more. I think it's good to see people fired up. I think it's good to see people that are emotional, people that feel the pain, people that feel the pain over here. And someone who doesn't feel the pain, I can't help that. That's well beyond me. That comes from within. At the same time, again, someone wants to make such a statement. Don't listen. You don't have to listen. There's no question. So a person over here, right, as we mentioned, that if you muzzle yourself, you're not going to be able to answer questions. You will not answer questions over here. Why? He's going to be afraid. He's going to be too embarrassed. Comes on, Rashi explains, anyone who's not embarrassed to get advice about their doubts in front of their rabbi, they will raise themselves to great spiritual heights and learning understanding. Right? That makes perfect sense. In other words, you won't be embarrassed. You'll ask the questions you need to get advice on. You're going to erase your doubts. People have a lot of doubts. There are a lot of doubts about a number of things. Right? A lot of things. So what do you want? You want clarity. Does it go like this? Does it go like that? What's the answer? There's nothing worse than having doubts. Right? And I see this all the time. People get bothered. They can't sleep. It aggravates them. They see certain things. They hear certain things. They want to understand, what do we do in this case? What do we do? They want their questions answered. They don't want to be left in doubt. There's almost nothing worse than being in doubt. So what do you do? Person has doubts. They go to someone who can clarify. Right? Obviously, as we mentioned, someone who knows what they're doing. Someone who can clarify the information. Somebody who does such a thing will raise themselves to great spiritual heights. At the same time, someone who's quiet because they're embarrassed to ask a question, then in the end, what do we say? We said they're not going to be able to know how to answer. Why not? Very simple. They're too embarrassed to get clarity. So they'll move on. They'll try and get their own answer, and most likely they'll make a mistake. Right? They won't know how to answer questions if they don't ask themselves. Also, if a person hangs out with people who waste their time. Now, this we could probably speak for the next 2 hours. If they waste their time with frivolousness of this world. CFL! Right? They waste their time with all these things. What's our obligation? You're going to love this. What's the obligation? We have to distance ourselves from them. Right? People are going to be afraid to distance themselves. Right? Because they'll think these people are good for them. Now, what does that mean in the vernacular? It means stay away from people who take you away from following God and doing the right thing. Now, who does that apply to? That can apply to a spouse. That could apply to family. That could apply to friends, right? And unfortunately, a lot of people in this process, they come out of paganism, come out of Christianity, whatever it is, and now they're either Noahides or they want to convert. Whatever the case is, many, many times, family falls by the wayside. Now, I'm not saying it has to happen. I'm not saying it's always going to happen. There are people that, are respectful. I always say they're going to be as respectful till you can't eat in their house. And once you can't eat in their house and you can't do the same things they do, they're a lot less respectful. Then they're going to say, why do you have to do this? Why can't you be like this? They'll come up with 20 different answers that don't make any sense. Now, at the end, there's another issue. You could have people in the family that are religious, right? Bible thumpers, whatever, and left and right, they're trying to convince you, or God forbid your kids, that they should believe in JC, or they should believe in other things or whatever. So at that point, you got to put your foot down. You have to tell them, listen, you want to have a relationship? I'm more than open to having a relationship. There are certain things you're not going to talk about. Not to me, not to my spouse, not to my kids. That's it. Right? I'm not going to allow it. And, and if that's a problem, then I have to cut my losses here. Now, people will say, well, you're different and you changed, right? I've been accused of that. We stayed the same. You changed. So what was my answer? I didn't change. I just reconnected to a chain that goes back 3,000 years. Our chain got broken. We'll call it America, right? That chain got broken. So I'm reconnecting to that chain, right? But people did not want to hear, you think what we're doing is wrong. Yes, but you used to do this. So what? I'm not the same person.
Don't do that anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
So the question is,
it's called growth. How
far does this go? And I don't believe everybody has to be a dish rag over here to be stomped on, disrespected, and all that.
But don't be prudish.
If let's say it was a Jew, let's say in my case, let's say, the Jew that returned to Judaism, they're more disrespectful of that because, they're a Jew at heart, right? Their heart has that spark that was on Mount Sinai. So now they're taken aback, they're offended. If I would have become a monk or a Sikh or any of these other things, they probably would have been a little more respectful. Why would they have been more respectful? They've been more respectful because it doesn't affect them. They're not going to go out and be a Sikh, right? They're not going to go out and be a monk or do these other things. They're going to do whatever they do. So they're not necessarily going to be threatened by what you do because it doesn't affect their lives. But if you start telling them, listen, you intermarried, I can't really have any contact with your spouse, or your kids, and I'm not going to eat in your house, and I'm going to do these same things, and you're telling them what's right and wrong, they're not going to want to hear it. They're not going to want to hear it one way or another. So if there's going to be constant friction, then you have to make a decision. And you have to put your foot down at some point. And and a person should say, we can agree to disagree. And that's it. We won't speak about this anymore. There are certain circumstances people have to understand you can't move from. You can't go left or right. In other words, if it's forbidden, there is no way to compromise. Then what can you do? You can't find a magical formula to tell you, okay, we're going to permit this now. In this case. Like someone told me, I was on a plane coming back to Israel. This person said, I was at a wedding. I asked them what they were doing there. Said, my sister got married. I said, oh, Mazel Tov. He goes, well, wasn't so great. She married an non-Jew. I think I mentioned the story before. So she married a non-Jew. So I said, so how'd you go to the wedding? How are you allowed to go to the wedding? Right? You represent Judaism. You're an Orthodox Jew. Torah says many times you're not allowed to intermarry. So I asked him, how'd you go to the wedding? He said, no, they understood I was there under protest. So I said, yeah, you were eating your kosher food under protest. You were doing the hora, on the dance floor under protest. They knew you were there under protest. You got to nip it in the bud. There are certain things you can't do, as an Orthodox Jew. You can't go. That's not, there's nothing to talk about. There's zero to talk about. So I remember I was in such situation. Somebody said, can't you find some leniency somewhere? So I had a very simple answer. I said, 20 years ago, we said, if you intermarry, we're not coming to the wedding. We said that clear. So we weren't kidding. Not kidding now. Did it cause a whole brouhaha? Yes, it did. Did it stop us? No. Did we get a lot of flack? Got a lot of flack. Right? Are you allowed to go to an intermarriage? Not allowed to go. Even the secular marriage between two secular Jews. Also a good question, depending what's going on there. Right? How much you can stay for different things. Right? It's a little bit easier. Right? It's a little bit easier. But how can you go to an intermarriage if you're an Orthodox Jew? I'm there under protest. What do you mean you're under their protest? You shouldn't be there, period. Right? Where are you going to find rabbinic leniency for that? A person marries a non-Jew, they lose the status of a Jew. He can't repent in such a case unless the other spouse either get divorced or they die. Or the person converts. So there are certain things, Jewish law, I cannot change. I cannot compromise. There is some gray area with certain things. Right? Now, again, we mentioned earlier, it depends where you're holding the process. It depends on a lot of different factors. And even though it might be forbidden in general, could be, for certain things it might be permissible, it depends. Right? It depends what it is. So in my case, I didn't want to do it because the main reason is because, we weren't respected. And if I'm not respected in any way, shape, or form, why would I bend over backwards to go to something? Because you have to, it's family. Screw family. Right? What does it have to do with anything? Right? Okay, this I can't do. This I can't do. This possibility can make some sort of compromise. Right? But the thing, they say, okay, find the compromise. Area. They said, you just find the compromise. they're not appreciating what you're doing. They're certainly not appreciating what you're going through. And not only that, they're totally disrespecting you. Right? And, I go through this a number of times, and I don't even bother, I don't answer because it's a total waste of time. You know that they know that you know that they know. Whatever you say doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But you have to respect
nobody
what they
wants
say.
to be in a perpetual chess match with every
No, it's
interaction.
not even that. It's like you have all the
It's too
information
stressful.
trying to convince someone else. They're not interested in listening to the information, but it's beyond that. It's not about trying to convince someone else. They're not even interested in the question. They'll make fun of you without respecting what you have to say. Right? That's not even a
I
chess
get
match.
that
That's
still, Rabbi, with ex-Christian associates, as B'nai Noach. I mean, yeah, they don't want to hear it, but yet they have an angst against the position, and they will.
For sure. Well, listen, you can agree to disagree. You can have a discussion. The problem is that if you are disrespected, why do you want to have a discussion? Right? That's the question. And again, I go through this, on a regular basis because I know that my position is not going to be respected. Right? But they expect their position. Of course I have to respect. And I said I'm not open-minded.
Demanded almost, yeah.
I'm not open-minded. I don't claim to be open-minded. Right? I know exactly what I stand for, and I know exactly what the Torah says, and you don't. Right? So, you want to ram it down my throat, and you think it's stupid, you think it's this, you think it's that, you don't have a leg to stand on because you don't know anything. Right? And that's where the conversation normally ends. They're like, all right, you're a fanatic, we'll agree to disagree. That's not an answer. That, whatever. It's not a question of be offended, not being offended. Right? Because whatever they say, they'll probably offend you, in different ways. But it's not about them. It's about the fact they don't respect what you have to say. They don't respect any knowledge that you have. And it makes sense why not. Because your knowledge goes against their life. It upends their life. Right? Tells them what they're doing is wrong. They don't want to hear that. Nobody in their right mind on their side wants to hear that. But you have to hear them spew their garbage. You can't answer. Well, that's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. Okay? So what do? You move on. You don't waste time. Right? To get in these arguments, a waste of time. The question is, should you have such a connection to such people? And sometimes you have no choice. Sometimes with certain family members, you have no choice. But if it ever comes down to the fact where, things get out of hand and they say, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And, you don't have a choice. Okay. So then you got to draw the line. Then you got to draw the line. So I would say in most cases, not all, but in most cases, people go through this and people basically end up cutting off relationship with the family. I had a family member ask me this question a long time ago. Would you tell people to do this? I said, it depends on the situation. I wouldn't say across the board, right? But I would say that most people go through this and there is a lot of disconnect. And there are times that, they just won't speak to family because there's just no common ground anymore. They have no common ground. They're obnoxious. They don't have anything to gain over here, right? What do you have to gain? You're going to get together, however often. All they're going to do is make fun of you and what you believe. Maybe they'll make fun of your kids also. So what do you gain by it? You don't gain anything. You just gain aggravation, right? You gain them getting under your skin. So why bother? And what do people say? People make the statement, I'm sure you've never heard it. People make the statement, blood is thicker than water. Right? So what? Family's family. So I said to this person who was intermarried, until you intermarry. Then it's a different story. Right? But family's not the end to end all things. Some families are very tight, some families not. Whatever. But who says I have to be the subject of abuse? Right? Nobody says that. So I learned over the years the hard way what to answer, what not to answer. And I would say for every number of comments, I'll pick one thing to answer. Maybe. Most things, I could take 10 comments on the chin, not answer any of them. Because it doesn't matter. Because they're not going to listen, and it's irrelevant. Because no matter what you say, it's irrelevant. Okay? So why bother answering? Now, it depends. If it's something where, you really have to stick up for Torah, so yeah, then you might have to answer. But a lot of other things, you don't. There's no mitzvah to answer. All you're gonna do is antagonize the other person, so you just let it go. But a person in that situation will say like this: you heard one comment, fine, you let it go. You heard a second comment, you let it go. And I'll say the fourth comment's below the belt. And at a certain point, the person's gonna say, "Come on, I've had enough." Now imagine this is exactly what we do to God on a daily basis. Right? We make mistakes, we say things, we do things. God said, okay, the first time, I'm going to let it go. Second time, I'm going to let it go. I'm going to get a drop angry. Third time, fourth time, fifth time, 10th time, 100th time. What does he do? He gives us a golden opportunity to repent. Right? And repentance is miraculous. Because if you offend someone else, if they offend you, that relationship is never the same. It's never, ever the same. But by God, certainly by a Jew, he uproots what you've done if the repentance process was done right. Totally uproots it. It's like you never did it. And you get the mitzvah over here. It's tremendous, right? But we have to think in humanistic terms. In humanistic terms, someone offends someone else, they don't get a second, third, fourth time. They're out after the first time, right? We're very petty in many ways. Either person comes and begs and says, listen, you understand, what I went through, whatever. Okay, you should forgive them. 100% you should forgive them, even if it's hard. But does that mean I have to be best friends with them afterwards? No. Is that relationship ever the same afterwards? No. Right? It's not usually the same.
No.
So imagine, someone does that to another person. Imagine what we do to God. And that God gives us the ability to repent.
I think of that often, yeah.
That is pretty miraculous. It shouldn't exist. It's a miracle. Repentance is an absolute miracle. Because God doesn't want us apples. Right? What does the prophet tell us? He wants us to repent. That's what he wants. Right? No. He doesn't want to kill us, doesn't want to hurt us. If he has to, he will in order to wake us up. But in general, he doesn't want to do that. Right? But, if we think about it in humanistic terms, it doesn't make any sense at all. It doesn't make any rational sense. Right? And the reason is very simple because, we all have family members that we don't like. Everybody has them. Right? And if you don't have them, you're lucky. Right? But, when that person gets under your skin, and they've gotten under your skin for years, you don't wait for the second comment to pounce. After the first comment, you already got your fangs. You already got your Louisville Slugger ready.
Your skin's bruised and raw. You already got
your mouth ready to flatten this person like a pancake. Because you're sick of taking what they say. Right? And you're just going to knock them down. But we do that 10 times worse. We do that to God on a regular basis. If we take stock, which I always tell people to do, if you take stock of what we do on a daily basis, you get up in the morning or before you go to sleep, what do I hope to accomplish in the morning? How much do I want to learn? How much this? How much that? And then see what we accomplish at the end of the day. Right? How we spoke, how we learned, all these different things. We're going to get a clear picture of who we are. Very, very clear picture. That being the case, imagine what we do, how much fear of heaven we should have when we realize all the terrible things we've done on a daily basis to God. Forget about the others. We're talking about the God himself, just sins between man and God. So with that, you never get out of bed, right? It would make perfect sense. Make absolutely perfect sense. But, I want to make clear that nobody in this world has to be a dish rag. No one has to be abused psychologically. No. People say things.
When is it a choice? Yeah. When it is a decision.
I don't care if they're parents or whatever. Parents have to be respected. Right? Doesn't mean you have to stand up for them. Right? Doesn't mean I have to honor them in different ways if they're evil, technically. But you can't abuse them. Can't make fun of them. Right? In general, you have to be respectful in many ways. And that's a hard thing. That's a very hard thing to do. Right? Now, parents can do terrible things to their kids. Right? I'm not, not saying physically abusive, but, they can demolish them in other ways, over the years.
Starving.
And a person could say, like, why should I have a connection to this person? They're going to say, well, this person gave birth to you. They took care
I've
of you.
seen that.
They fed you.
Parental abuse. I've
You
seen
know,
that.
you have to have a little bit of respect, even if they were disrespectful to you, over the years. Now, I would say I was someone in a pretty bad situation over the years. And what's the reason? They have a connection. They have a connection to parents. It's because the Torah tells them to. Now, even though the Torah tells them that, and the parent could be evil or do terrible things, you think that's going to be easy? It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy by any stretch, right? That being said, it's not the idea. It's not the idea of turning the other cheek, and saying, okay, so you just ignore what they did? No, right? You can't hate, a Jew cannot hate another Jew in their heart. Now, technically, I can hate a non-Jew in my heart, but it's not good. It's certainly not good for the heart. It's not good for aggravation and all that. Any psychologist will tell you it'll take years off your life. It's not worth it, right? But someone who's done something, let's say, a parent, let's say, has done something really bad, really bad, very hard to forgive. Very, very hard to forgive, especially if they don't think they did anything wrong, right? But on top of that, they have a Torah obligation to still have some level of a connection there. Right? For some people, it may be the connection should be minimal. At another level, whatever the connection is, it's not going to be easy because of what the child's gone through. So in this case, where the child's had a rough time for a number of years, so if it wouldn't have been for the Torah to say you got an obligation to deal with the parents and have respect and all that, is that an easy situation? Totally not. Totally not an easy situation. But at the end of the day, if it wouldn't be for the Torah, they would have ditched the parents a long time ago. And they would have been justified. Let's say in a case where they would have been justified. They would have been totally justified to ditch the parents, have nothing to do with them, years before. So why did they? There's only one reason. Because there's a God in heaven. There's a God who gave us the 10 Commandments. And one of those commandments is that you have an obligation to honor parents. And you have to respect them. Right? Now, even if they're evil, there are certain things I don't have to do. Right? I still cannot disparage them. I still cannot embarrass them, etc. So it's a catch-22. One of the hardest mitzvahs to do fully, in this world. Because of so many other different factors. So I'm just talking, parents, family. That doesn't mean we're gonna see eye to eye. Doesn't really matter. If there's somewhat mutual respect, you can have a connection. Okay, right? If it gets to the point where, there are other things that are gonna go on that are bad, and they're gonna speak badly against you, they're gonna speak badly in front of your spouse, in front of your kids, and try and convince them of other things which I've seen. Then you got to draw the line. You absolutely have to draw the line. Now, I would say in most cases, family is cut off at some point. I'm not saying everybody, but it usually doesn't mix. If a person has a relationship with family and they can live and let live, they're lucky. In most families, it's more personal. What? You won't eat in my house? You won't come to this event. You won't come to that one. What? You're too religious for us now? What are you going through another phase? You're going through it. It's hard, right? But you have to stick to your guns. Better, I guess we'll end with this. Better to be embarrassed in this world, by people who don't know anything than be embarrassed in front of God of doing the wrong thing.
Well said.
Right?
Yeah.
I can tell you from certain decisions I've had to make that were unpopular decisions. Very, very unpopular decisions.
Right.
And I stuck to my gun. Listen to what my rabbi said, and okay, told people you don't have to like it. This is the reality. And what people don't want to hear, and this is a whole nother discussion we'll get into now, is that there are repercussions for your actions. Just because you do something doesn't mean you're not liable for anything. There are repercussions. Right? I told someone this weeks back. The repercussions for what this person did, I said the repercussions in your own life. Right? There are also repercussions. You don't want to hear it. I'm not going to tell you because you don't care. But I said there are repercussions. You don't think there's anything wrong with anything. So there's nothing wrong with anything. You don't think there are repercussions. You believe in the Torah, the repercussions. Whether you get it now or in the next world ain't going to matter. Right? Someone said, well, I've been married to this non-Jewish woman, Jew talking, been married to this non-Jewish woman 35 years, see nothing bad happened. Well, not nothing bad. Been a few things, that have happened, but okay. I said, so what? I said, you don't think something bad going to happen? What is King Solomon in Proverbs? We don't know what today's going to bring. We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. Right? The few missions we'll get to probably next year. Speaking about the fact of, you have to repent today because you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. Right? We already sort of spoke about that as well. You don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. Can you guarantee me, I said to this person, nothing's going to happen? You're going to live till you're 95. You'll be drooling at the end of your life, maybe out of your mind, and then you'll die. You'll be lucky if that happens. Am I going to say you're going to suffer and you're going to get hit by a train and all that? I have no idea what life's going to bring. No idea. King Solomon's greater than both of us put together. And in 10 lifetimes, never be close to him. And he tells us in Proverbs, you don't know what today or tomorrow is going to bring. I wouldn't open up your mouth.
Very well said.
You can have all the money in the bank, everything seeming going well right now. You could come down with a dreaded disease and die in 2 weeks. You just don't know. And if you don't know, you know what they say, Al tiftach pen l'satan. Do not open your mouth to Mr. S. Because they say, well, everything's going good, nothing bad's happened. That's all you need to say. Mr. S can open up your file. Really? Nothing bad's happened? Let's turn a few screws over here. Let's see. So I said, even if nothing happens now, you live to a ripe old age. I really believe, and I got a lot of proof for it, certainly believe you're going to get toasted later. Person, I don't believe in that. I'm going 6 feet under. Well, I hope you're right. Right? Because if there's a 1% chance,
that's their best outcome.
You, in my language, you are 100% toast. Right? So never, ever open your mouth and say, this will never happen. That'll never happen, because you don't know. Right? And on that positive note, we'll leave it there.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Rabbi, for helping us to understand the pious side of this matter and exactly how to respond. And there's some beauty in there. So are we going to be looking at a part 11 next week?
We are looking definitely at part 11. Most likely probably a part 12 as well. We'll see. We're almost we're getting there. Right? We're getting towards the end of this mission, but probably at least one other class, and if not 2 or 3 for that matter. But yeah, we're definitely got a few more parts to go. But what they say, the more you delve into it, the more you uncover. And there's a ton. There's a ton over here, to speak about, which leads to all kinds of other things that, we have to be aware of. We absolutely have, these are not just like fringe things like, what's he talking about? It's Kabbalah, it's this, it's that. These are very, very practical things that everyone can take and put in their daily lives. Right. And that's, right. As Dan the Man would say, it's ethics of our fathers, changing our lives. It's all about ethics, and that's what it is.
Beautiful, beautiful stuff. I so appreciate it, Rabbi. I wanted to share an announcement. I want to thank everybody that's, maybe contributed some donations in the last little while. Always wondering how were we planning to, forward some Noahide broadcasts. Well, just recently, Rabbi Chaim Goldberg and myself, we just purchased a Roku television station. So in about 3 weeks, we'll be hosting this show live on a Roku TV station. We'll be streaming to millions of homes in the United States and abroad. And we're really hoping to grow.
Do you imagine how many people we can tick off in all over America?
Captive audience. It's not the same as YouTube. Captive audience. They turn it on in their TVs. They're turning it on. They can't interact, right? It's not like social media where you're going to get hammer troll.
That's even better. I'm ready. If you're ready, 12 hours straight. We'll do it. I'm ready. Right? No caffeine.
You can do it too.
Grab them until we beat them into submission.
I just love your energy. The Energizer, Synergizer Bunny of Torah, still sharing Torah. And it's just such a joy to hear you go. I know you could do a 12-hour session. And you know what? We may just have to try that someday.
You just got to make sure that your board can handle, handle me for 12 hours.
Yeah, this backdrop is actually quite intensive on the CPU.
I would tell you if you have to speak to William Hall, and you guys better work it out, because otherwise I'll break down your system within 2 hours.
Well, we've gone for over 3 in the past, Rabbi, and
you still held up, so that's good. That's good.
Yeah, if I've survived 3, it's a question of knowing the mathematical limits of your CPU and how much RAM you're running. And the bandwidth, it's all got to mesh together. It's just use the right tools for the right job, and it comes out pretty good. But yeah, we want to forward some Noahide broadcasting in the world, and we're gonna have a live Roku station, and that's because of some support that has come in, and the encouragement. I want to be able to open up opportunity for some higher grades of a message series, and just hope that things continue to grow and communities Noahides begin to flourish all around the planet, and connections get made, and we so value the light of Torah and ethics of the fathers. The ethics you're pouring out today, Rabbi, is something we all need to hear. So, but I do need to close this down and get ready for Rabbi Poston's 48 Ways to Wisdom class coming up in about 20 minutes. So Hashem willing, we're going to be back next week with part 11 of Mishnah, chapter 2, Mishnah 6. And thank you for all you do, Rabbi Coffman. We hope you get a blessed week, even though you've had your anniversary last week and had some rest. We hope you still have a blessed week. We know you're involved in so many different things, and I know that the people appreciate all that you do. So till next week, folks, have a wonderful, wonderful week.